Hello, everyone. My name is Marty Howell. I'm the Assistant Dean for Academic and Student Affairs in the College of Education. And along with many others, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the College of Education. We have looked forward to seeing you here for quite some time, and hopefully we will get to greet you in person in the not too distant future. I also want to welcome you to this orientation session, which is titled Components of a Successful Academic Mindset. The material that will be shared with you here is based on the work of Stephen Chu, who is a professor of psychology at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. I first learned this content several years ago when I attended a conference presentation put on by Dr. Chu, and the material here is shared with you with the permission of Dr. Chu. In the 20 minutes or so of this session, we're going to cover these particular topics. So we'll talk about beliefs about learning that don't serve you well in graduate school. We'll talk about a concept called levels of processing. We'll talk about something called intense study sessions. We'll also talk about self-affirmations. And finally, advising and mentoring in the College of Education. Let's start with beliefs about learning that don't serve you very well in graduate school. The first is that learning is fast. It's easy to learn and it's quick to learn. The second, being good at a subject is a matter of inborn talent rather than hard work. Next, knowledge is composed of isolated facts. And finally, I'm really good at multitasking, especially during class or studying. All these are common beliefs for students who might be at the middle school or high school level. It's likely that as an undergraduate, as a successful undergraduate, you learned that it takes more than these notions of learning to be successful. In this presentation, we'll talk about some of the things that counter these beliefs. On the subject of multitasking, it's important to be aware of the concept of attentional blank. So what attentional blank tells us is that there is no such thing as a very brief or very momentary distraction. So switching attention itself is a time-consuming and effortful kind of activity. You know this if you have a smartphone. Anytime you check an alert, you spend a little bit of time away from the task that you're working on, looking at the alert, and then trying to return and get re-engaged with the task. If you spend time with 20 different alerts, you've actually wasted an hour without actually checking anything. Also, keep in mind that the average Facebook visit or any visit to a social media platform usually takes about 20 minutes. By the time you log in, review what you want to review, and then log back. By the time you've made 3 visits to Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever your platform is, again, you spend about an hour. Also, checking texts or Twitter, even those brief kinds of messaging platforms, takes a few minutes every time you do it. So it's important to remember that there really is no such thing as a momentary distraction. If you just think that you're going to spend a few minutes, it probably won't work. In presentations, Stephen Chu asked his audience this question: which of the following is the most important ingredient for successful learning? Is it A, the intention and desire to learn, B, paying close attention to the material as you study, C, learning in a way that matches your personal learning style, D, the time you spend studying, or E, what you think about while studying? If we were together doing this presentation in person, I would pause this presentation at this point and have us watch a video from Dr. Chu about something called levels of processing. This video, the short video that I mentioned, is part of a video series that Dr. Chu created called How to Study. And I would really encourage you, either right now or at a later time, to pause this video, go out to your browser and try to find this How to Study video series. You'll see there's some links here, or you can also search for keywords such as Stephen Chu, Samford University, How to Study, and it will take you to that video series. The video that I would have you watch here is video number 2, which refers to levels of processing. I would encourage you now to pause this video, to go out and watch this video about levels of processing. It will take you about 7 minutes. Once you're done, come back to this video. If you watch Dr. Chu's video, you learned that levels of processing has to do with what you think about while you're taking up new information. There's shallow processing, which focuses on things like spelling, appearance, sound. That typically can be seen in rote memorization of facts or flashcards to try to learn isolated facts. If you think back to maybe when you were younger in elementary school or middle school and you were trying to prepare yourself for true and false question tests or multiple choice kinds of tests, you may have done these kinds of activities just to try to memorize something briefly in order to have the right answers for the particular test. Deep processing, on the other hand, focuses on making subjective meaning of the information that you are taking up. And there are many ways to do that, but here are a couple examples. One is relating that new information to prior knowledge that you have or to other information that you're learning. And another example is making the information personally meaningful. So relating that information to something in your own personal experience. There are several strategies you can use for achieving deep processing while you are studying. The first of those is elaboration. That is, thinking about the concept that you are learning and relating that concept to other concepts that you already know or other concepts that you are learning about. There's also distinctiveness. So asking yourself, how is this concept or this thing that I'm learning different from other concepts or other things I already know or other things that I am learning? The next is personal. So how can I relate this information to my personal experience? And that's either my experience as a student, my experience as an employee or a worker, or my experience just going about my everyday life. Another way to achieve deep processing is to think about retrieval and application. So in other words, how am I expected to use or how will I be expected to apply this concept as I go forward in my life as a student or in my career? So these properties, these ways of thinking about new information can lead to development of the connected understanding that's really important for deep processing. So this takes us back to Dr. Chu's question and the implications for learning. So a few points here. The first is that intention and motivation to learn are not as important as you might think. Certainly they are important. If you don't intend to learn and you're not motivated to learn, you won't. But just by themselves, they're not as important as you might think. Also, attention and amount of study is necessary, but it's not sufficient for learning. It's not just putting your attention to the page, and it's not just the amount of time that you spend, but really it's how you spend that time and how you process the information that you learn. So your learning strategy has a huge impact on your learning. Shallow processing actually undermines learning, even when intention and motivation are very high. Deep level processing then is critical for learning, particularly at the graduate level, where you are expected by your professors to process and synthesize various kinds of information. So keep in mind those strategies that we talked about earlier: elaboration, distinctiveness, personalizing, retrieval, and application. Depending on your previous study habits as an undergraduate, this may actually seem very counterintuitive. So here's some myths about learning. The first is that all study is effective, and what matters is amount, intensity, and desire. And the fact is that not all study is the same. Some study is actually useless if you're using shallow processing, for example, and some can be counterproductive. Another myth is that motivation automatically improves study effectiveness. So again, motivation is important, but motivation without deep processing is ineffective in terms of learning. A third myth is that effort equals learning. Well, it's true that effort is required for learning, and learning is hard work, but not all hard work leads to learning. So now let's talk about something very pragmatic, which is intense study sessions. Here's a way that you can apply deep processing to the times when you are ready to sit down and focus on your learning. So the first is set a goal. Spend 1 or 2 minutes deciding what it is that you want to accomplish in your study session. Number two, study with focus. So take 30 to 40 to 50 minutes. Eliminate all those distractions and temptations. If that means turning your phone off, if that means going in a different room, if that means telling your friends and loved ones that you just need some time alone, do that. And then while you're studying, use deep processing and in those strategies that we discussed earlier. The third is reward yourself. After you're done really focusing on that material, give yourself a break. That might mean to get a snack, or maybe call a friend, play a short game, go back to your Twitter account. Just spend 5 or 2 minutes rewarding yourself and taking a small break. Finally, spend some time reviewing, just 5 to 10 minutes. Go over what it is you just studied and see if you can recall the important points without looking back at what you were reading. Next, let's talk for a moment about self-affirmations. Graduate study is challenging, not only because you're learning new material and new subject matter, but also because in graduate school, you are very often comparing yourself to others, and that sometimes can lead to imposter syndrome. If you don't know what imposter syndrome is, I would strongly encourage you to look that up and learn a little bit more about it, because you will experience it at some point during your graduate study. One way to counter imposter syndrome is through self-affirmations. And it's this process of constantly reminding yourself about the positives that you bring to graduate study. So the first is, I belong in this academic community. And I'm here to tell you that you do. You applied to pursue graduate study here at the University of Washington and in the College of Education. And the faculty who reviewed your application for graduate study read your application, and they also believed that you belonged in this academic community. The second is to tell yourself that my ability and competence grow with my effort. As I continue to work, as I continue to study and use deep processing while I study, I become better at what I do. My abilities grow, my competence grows, and I become a better student and a better consumer of information. The third is tell yourself that you can succeed at this. This to me relates back to the first point, which is that you belong in this academic community. Because you belong here, because you work hard and your ability and competence continue to grow, you can succeed at this. And then a fourth affirmation to tell yourself is that this work has value for me and for others. So what you're doing in the College of Education is something that is valuable for you. It's valuable for your own learning. It's valuable for your career. It's valuable for the communities that you belong to and the people with whom you interact. So keep that in mind as well. Finally, I want to touch on advising and mentoring in the College of Education. And the reason this is an important topic is that it's important for you to know that you are not alone in this endeavor. Not only do you have your peers, your fellow graduate students, but you also have a community of faculty members and staff who are here to support you along the way. Specifically, what I want to talk about here is your relationship with faculty members. So a few points to make here. The first is that every student is assigned an initial faculty advisor upon admission to the College of Education. If you're in a cohort-based program, that faculty advisor might be your program director. So I would encourage you to check that out. The role of that initial faculty advisor is to really work with you during that first year graduate study to do at least a couple of things. So one is to help you plan a course of study, select your courses for that first year, and also to start thinking about the research that you might pursue either during that first year or in later years as part of your graduate experience. I also want to talk about a committee chair. The committee chair is someone who will work really with you, alongside you, as you pursue the culminating project for your degree program. If you're a doctoral student, that's your dissertation. If you're a master's student, that is your thesis or other kind of culminating project for your master's degree. But that committee chair is a really important person in helping you navigate the various steps and milestones along the way to degree completion. Oftentimes, the committee chair is the same person as your initial assigned faculty advisor, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes your interests might change, or sometimes you might learn together that your working styles just aren't very compatible. And so you may decide to approach another faculty member and ask that faculty member if they will chair your committee to help you finish your degree program. And I want to really encourage you to think about that as a viable option. It happens frequently with students, so they can find better matches for that committee chair role. And faculty are not going to be upset or put out because you decide to work with another faculty member instead. The next thing I want to talk about is mentors. And when I talk about mentors, that could be a couple of things. It could be someone like your committee chair or another committee member who is working closely with you to help you finish your final degree project or your degree program. So there could be someone in that kind of formal role. Also, it can include faculty members with whom you have simply developed a relationship based on mutual academic interests. And that is someone that you will talk to. You might get career advice from that person, or you might talk to them about conferences, or you might talk to them about research studies, even if they don't have a formal role in your graduate student experience. And I want to encourage you to cultivate those kinds of relationships to provide you that support that you need as you go through your graduate program, and then even leave your graduate program and move into your career. In all of these relationships, it's important to work hard early on to establish them as positive and productive relationships. So just a few things to think about here. One is to plan ahead. When you're going to talk to a faculty member, whether it's someone you want to approach about being on a committee, someone you want to talk about because you have an interest in their work, it's important to plan ahead and think about how you want that conversation to go. What are the things that you want to say, or what are the things that you want to ask? What kind of responses do you hope to have from that faculty member? And then how will you respond if those responses are not the ones that you had hoped for? It's important to set goals for those conversations. So, and typically that's important also because the conversations are going to be time bound. Typically, when you sit down and meet with a faculty member, you'll have maybe 20, maybe 30 minutes to have that conversation. And so it's important to have goals for that conversation um, and think carefully about how you use your time, and then how it is you get to the request that you want to make, the question you want to ask, or the point that you want to say. Finally, and this has to do especially with your faculty advisor or your committee chair or committee members, is clarifying expectations about the relationship. What is it that you hope and expect to have from that relationship in terms of time, in terms of responsiveness, and so forth? And it's also important to ask the faculty advisor what their expectations are in the relationship. What do they hope from you in terms of your time? What do they hope from you in terms of the frequency of meetings or how responsive you are to their questions? On our website in the College of Education, we have a page called Working with Your Faculty Advisor. It's a resource page that was created for graduate students, and it provides some even more detailed information about how to work with faculty advisor and establish those positive and productive relationships. Unfortunately, I see that we don't have a link to that page here, but if you type those keywords into the College of Education homepage, this will pop up as one of the first results. If you have a continued interest in the work of Dr. Chu and related notions around learning, I would encourage you to look into some of these particular sources. These are ones that informed Dr. Chu's work and that you might find interesting if you have that continued interest. Finally, I just want to thank you for your time and your interest in this session. And again, I want to welcome you to the College of Education, and I look forward to meeting you at some point.